Hello, and welcome to Glassfire's Top 5, where we usually count down the top 5 art exhibitions in Texas. We're doing something a little different this week because we are all still sheltering in place. This week, we thought we would look at the top 5 ways that artists and art institutions are still creating during the great lockdown of 2020. And my guest this week is Colette Copeland, who is an artist, a performance artist, and a writer, a contributor to Glasstire. Colette, welcome to Top 5, and thank you for doing this with me.
Thanks. Happy to be here, Chris.
Yeah, we had a conversation about this previously where we just kind of talked about some of the things that we could observe happening and that we are at Glasstire are also sort of in tune with. And we're just going to go down that list. So number 5 on the list is the film and video festivals. It's sort of a no-brainer. We've all been to some of these things, and what a more perfect thing to have virtually than a film and video festival.
Yeah, I was really lucky to catch the Dallas Video Fest that just happened a couple of weeks ago. As you mentioned, it's a seamless transition because people are already have access to their screens. You know, they're obviously missing the um, interacting with others, but there's been Zoom Q&As. And then I think also where some of the international film festivals, I know Richard Bailey recently had a piece in the Berlin Film Festival. And so making those available online where, you know, the rest of the world has access to see that programming has been really exciting.
Yeah, and here in Texas, the Fusebox Festival, that is usually sort of a typical film video performance festival that have people attending from around the world, around the country. Did a virtual Fusebox Festival this year, and so did Countercurrent. They have a wonderful series called the 10 Tiny Dances that was adapted from performer in Seattle, I believe.
Yeah, I was able to catch some of the online performances for Fusebox in Austin, which I believe was last week. My days are all kind of running together. But I thought that the performers did a really good job of it wasn't just a video of their performances. Many of them reimagined ways that they could directly engage with online viewers. So there were definitely creative, interactive approaches, which I thought, you know, it's creating a new genre in that effect.
Yeah.
We were talking about film festivals online, but also calls for work and how and translating from the physical to online and putting out exhibitions that are meant to be online. And so one of the ones that I have been involved with an Italian curator, and this is an open call. So anybody who is working with moving image, whether it's short film or video or something that's more animated, multimedia animation, they it's United Video Artists, and it's on Facebook, and anybody can go and can upload their short work there. And the curator organizer Enrico Tomaselli, his vision was the idea of having video as the vaccine, as a, you know, to counter all of the negativity, bringing beauty and art, you know, to soothe our minds, our bodies, you know, to use for healing. So
Yeah.
I love the premise of that, and I also love that it is open to anybody. And he is now building this online archive on Facebook, which will exist. So, you know, curators and artists and students will be able to go back and look at that and look at the specific period in time and the work that was being made in response to the crisis.
Number four on that list is something that you are familiar with as an artist and an educator, and that is the what artists and educators are doing creatively during the lockdown.
So, well, as all educators had to do, we had literally about a week and a half to transform our classrooms online. And one of the things that I really appreciated was the amount of online forums and sharing that went on. I teach both art and photography. There's specifically a photography forum called Photofika that quickly put together a great website of resources. Professors were sharing their assignments, how they adapted, how they did online critiques and make it interactive for the students, as well as they also have an online showcase for student work, since the students who would be having their exhibitions, both undergraduate and graduate, now don't have that physical space to do it in.
Exactly. UTA in Arlington sent out a PDF of their MFA pieces exhibitions, which is clearly not the most ideal way to see a show, but it's what we have right now. And I know in Fort Worth, Blind Alley Projects started an art space that has it's a one room space that faces the street with a really large window, and it wasn't planned for the lockdown, but it just sort of arrived um, as an ideal space. And I know that students from TCU have been having their MFA pieces exhibitions in the space. So yeah.
Yeah, and then a drive-by opportunity for people to actually see it in person. It just mediated through the glass front.
The other thing is the video conversations that it's either artists talking to other artists or critics talking to artists or artists just checking in with each other. Yeah, gallerists with their artists. I know you've done a couple of videos in that regard.
Yes, I feel like we've all become, prior to the shutdown, the quarantine, none of us knew what Zoom was. And
I
now
said
we're all very prolific Zoomers. And
that.
so I think the artist conversations, that has been really exciting to have those. I know I have participated in a few. The interviews that I've been doing have been specifically with artist couples and how they are surviving the pandemic, and the online publication in New York that is publishing those. I was able to get a couple of Italian couples. Italy was one of the places that got hit really hard early on. I wanted to see how they were doing. I have something coming out of India in a couple weeks, but also wanted to feature our hometown local artists. So the beloved Chuck and George, their interview went live last week. Hillebrand and Maximin is going live uh, next week, and Ryder Richards and Suan Rishi, I believe they were my second interview. So
Yeah.
that's been really exciting, and a, a project specifically tied to the times we're going through. So it feels very immediate, and I've had a lot more time with being quarantined to put some of that creativity to use.
And it goes without saying that Glassstein also started a check-in video series, and I think it's one of those things that if you buy a car of a certain brand, you start seeing that car everywhere. But I think it's also one of those things that just naturally comes out of brainstorming about how to connect with people and how to keep creating. And our check-in videos are one. Aaron Cluley Gallery in Dallas just did one with one of their artists, Zeke Williams. So I think we should see a few more of these popping up as ways that artists are just sort of staying connected with everything that's happening.
And I think that's great because it also, for the general public, demystifies the artist's practice. You know, taking them into the studio, they don't just see the finished work; they see all of the work, this and the experiments, the failures, everything that goes into behind the scenes that typically an audience doesn't have access to.
Yeah, it's it feels like a quick and dirty Art 21. Number 2 on the list is the phenomenon of sort of building your own exhibitions using exhibition software. I know we've seen some of these where they are tours of existing exhibitions, but you just mentioned Hillebrand and Maximin, um, who have done a project with Big Medium in Austin called Tiny Big Medium, where they've just sort of created a cutout PDF that you can print and cut out and stage your own exhibition, your own tiny exhibition at Big Medium. And I've seen a couple of those examples, and they're pretty cool. There's also there's a museum in Boston called the Shelter in Place Museum that has created a tiny space to scale, inviting artists to make large exhibitions in their scaled version of an art space, and that's pretty interesting.
I think as a concept that is really interesting to think about. You know how detailed, or if you have to shift the entire scale of how you imagine your work, and so specifically. Hillebrand and Maximin, with that piece, you still are very physical. It's a physical making, but then having to reimagine how is your work going to be seen or interpreted, or the context of it, how will it shift with this shift in scale and the shift with the virtuality aspect of it.
And that leads to the number 1 thing, which, I mean, these aren't really like, this is the best, this is
All
not
right.
the best, this is what we're doing, this is what we're all doing right now. But number 1 on the list is the virtual tours. Glasstire started a virtual tour of our own, where we solicit video tours of existing exhibitions, and it is by far one of the most visited parts of our space. Um, and we've received videos from a lot of different galleries in Texas, museums, um, and museums are also sort of doing it on their own. And this also includes like you're talking about the Guggenheim Museum virtual tour.
Yeah, the because my students, normally there is a mandatory museum visit to the DMA in Nasher every semester, and so in lieu of that, I had to figure out what are, what museums had the best virtual tours, or where it's hard to find an institution that had their entire collection online to do a meaningful scavenger hunt, or have enough visuals and writing about the curatorial essays, so that the students could write with some degree of comfort, and confidence that they had enough information to thoughtfully write about that. And so I was impressed that the Guggenheim was one of, the Louvre was another one, but the Guggenheim in particular had taken all of its current exhibitions in a very short time and translated that on online. In terms of what Glass Tire has been doing, I know that it has been such a popular, popular for the readership, because for many of us, we only get to see what's literally in our backyard. And then even, in Dallas, I never make it out to see everything. And so
Right.
it's been really great to be able to see virtually what's happening in the entire state. So I know Christina and I talked a little bit, and she said, I know viewers are hoping that that's going to still be a regular contribution, even when we go back to visiting spaces physically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things like with the checking in with artist videos where you see a lot more than you would have normally been able to. And I think it's a good supplement to in person visits. Well, there you have it. Our top 5 things that artists are doing to still make and create and exist in the great lockdown of 2020. So, can we talk about your background? What's behind you?
Ah, yes. So this is one of my alter egos. This was from a short film called Cog, and my previous performance partner and I. This was the 10th and final piece that we did together. It was filmed by Richard Bailey
Mm,
in the Texas Dunes. And so the piece is really about the tumultuous landscape of human relationships and about trying to become one. This costume was from part 2 when the couple returned to the dunes to die at the end of their life. And so I just love beards and love alter egos, and so I think she's kind of a badass. So I like to have her in the background when I'm doing these uh, interviews or these videos because it gives me confidence.
you're in good company in your background there. With that, we can say, see some art
Go
wherever you are.
online and see some art.